welcome to the Offshore Wind podcast live from the conference floor here in Madrid. You'll be really pleased to know that I've kicked out Stuart Mullen. He's indisposed at this moment in time. But I am joined today by a very special guest, by Carlos Martin Rivals from Dajin. Hello, Carlos.
Hello.
Hello,
nice
welcome.
to be here today. Thanks for inviting us.
Very good. And we're here in your home city.
Exactly. So I'm very happy to be in Madrid. It's my home city. I welcome so many friends from around Europe and around the world.
So for visitors here to win Europe, what's your one top tip for visiting Madrid? What should they do?
So many things to do in Madrid. But if I had to choose one, I would say art is the one thing which I find special about Madrid. So many amazing museums, so many things to see. So if you have some time spared for visiting something, Prado is of course a must see, but there's other nice museums like Reina Sofia, like Thyssen Bornemisza, or the more recent one, which is the Galleria de Colecciones Reales, which is a hidden museum, which is beautiful. A good recommendation if you have some time.
Perfect. We managed to go to Prado last time we were here, which was just excellent, mind-blowingly good. I'm endorsing your tip here. For everyone listening, you've got a bit of travel advice free as well there from a look.
Or if you have more time, just give me a ring and I can make some other suggestions.
You heard it here. So Carlos, I think you know the format of the Offshore Wind podcast. I'm sure you're a really keen listener and have been listening to the podcast for some time now. And I really want to kind of get to know you a bit, allow the listeners to get to know you a bit. So could you start with a bit of an introduction of yourself, your role at Dajin, and also your history in the industry?
Yep.
How did you get into this industry?
Yeah, great. So very quickly on a personal note, so I'm born and raised in Madrid, but I'm half French. That's maybe something exotic about my background. And I always kept to this double culture for myself, but also for my kids, which is great. So I have two kids, and I've been working in the offshore wind industry for almost 15 years now, essentially in floating wind. So I started working for EDP Renewables. I was the project director for Windfloat Atlantic there. At that time, where floating wind was more a dream than a reality. So that was an amazing journey. Windfloat Atlantic itself was a challenging project. It was dead a few times before it moved forward. And it's good to see it in the water now in front of Viana do Castelo. It had the opportunity to go to northern Portugal. Don't miss the view from the city. And then I move on to set up Windfloat Energy, the offshore wind developer. And a year ago, I moved to Dajin, where I'm working at today as general manager for floating wind, and also taking care of market development, which includes government affairs, regulation, new market assessment, and so on and so forth.
So it's fair to say that you're one of only a few people globally who's actually built a floating offshore wind project.
I contributed too. I was involved during the development phase, but it's something you realize very quickly in renewables and offshore wind in particular. It's a collective effort, and so many people have to contribute to make a project a reality. But a good lesson learned is that the collaboration in this industry is paramount. So many times you're a competitor, but you always partner somehow.
And actually, we've just had a delegation from Brazil who've just been out in the last few days to see Windfloat Atlantic. I did hear there were some rumors of extreme seasickness on the voyage out there. But I think they all had a fantastic time and learned a lot. So the kind of legacy of that project lives on, absolutely.
It's always a good visit, despite the seasickness. I'm sure that people will remember the beauty of the scenery and the magnificency of these turbines in the water more than anything else.
Absolutely. And maybe just moving on now to your role at Dajin and Dajin as a company. I know that you've fairly recently stepped into the role, as you were saying. And Dajin, a very interesting company now, really doing more in the European market. Can you tell us a little bit about your future plans and a bit about the history of Dajin as a company as well?
So I did a bit of history about Dajin to explain the company's culture and how it works. Dajin is a company that was started in the year 2000 by our chairman. one of these inspirational entrepreneurs that you meet from time to time. It started as a workshop doing maintenance for thermal power plants, but very quickly it embraced the growth wave of the wind industry, starting producing onshore towers and always trying to think what's going to be the next big thing in the industry. So it started early in producing offshore wind towers as well, in producing monopiles, transition pieces, and now we are moving into other types of foundations, like jackets, floating foundations. We can produce anchors. Something quite unique about Dajin, in my view, first of all, it's a company that only works in the wind industry. There's no other competing industries within Dajin. So the long-term development of this industry is our success. Our clients' success is our success. And that explains the very strong focus on client service that exists in the company. Client is paramount. Delivering our projects according to clients' expectations is almost a religion in the company. It's an obsession, super strong. And it also explains how the company has been developing over time, because we haven't talked to our initial activity of producing equipment. We have developed adjacent activities and businesses following what our clients were requesting from us. So in the first project we delivered in China for Europe, very quickly our customers said, we need you to deliver this in Europe. We don't want to take care about the logistics. And that's why Dajin set up a shipping team and a shipping business, which very quickly identified availability of vessels as a key bottleneck for the industry. So it decided to own its own fleet of vessels. And because the company realized that they were better built by ourselves than by third parties, we decided to build the vessels. And there was a shipyard called Dajin that was acquired, refurbished, put up to speed. And we have now two the carriers in the water. The second one was launched a few days ago. The first one made his maiden trip recently as well for Hornsea 3 project in the UK for Ørsted. But now it's becoming a new business for Dajin, and the purpose is to use the carriers first and foremost for our clients, but also offer them for other companies in this industry and across other industries. So this is just an example about the way the company develops, identifying how we will help our clients develop their projects, how we can help the global wind industry develop, and that's where we focus our efforts.
And so that activity is really stretching across the value chain that you're describing there. How does that work in practice when there's so many different partners, so many different business areas, as you were saying, innovating into new business areas? And how has that experience played out for you as you've stepped into this role? Yeah. Quite a different kind of...
Yeah. So I think it's a combination for the company, it's a combination of patience and long-term perspective about the industry. So the company has a long-term view about its business, about its relationship with clients, and so on and so forth. So we are here to support in the long run. So there's this idea that sometimes you need to be patient, but it's not incompatible with being very fast when that's needed as well. So our capacity to execute things fast when needed is also quite impressive. It was quite impressive for me. I already talk about client service, and I would say innovation is another very important factor. Innovation in production methodologies, production approach, but also in embracing the new waves of growth for the industry. And Floating Wind, which is the business I lead at Dajin, is a good example. It's of course still a nascent industry, but the company wants to be here for the long run and is investing a lot in positioning itself to serve projects and clients the best way possible.
I'm pleased that you mentioned floating wind, and let's maybe just pause there for a second or two, because as you're explaining your experience at the beginning of the podcast, you're obviously talking about your experience at Windfloat Atlantic, and At the moment, I think it's fair to say a lot of work is being done around how we push for floating wind, and at GWEC, we're also working on this floating wind industry accelerator, which I know that you've been contributing to. And for our listeners, very keen to tell you a bit more about that at some other time. But just on your perspectives of floating wind at the moment, how are you seeing the market here in Europe, and how are you seeing the market globally? And how does that kind of segment with what you're trying to achieve at Dajin?
Well, so first of all, I would like to highlight that this is a passion for me, as it is for many other colleagues. You were mentioning the floating wind accelerator, and I think there's a large group of people there passionate about making this happening. I think it's something which is needed across different geographies, and if we really want to complete the decarbonization journey across the globe, floating wind will have to play a role there. At the same time, we don't have to fool ourselves. It's a challenging industry. We're commenting about the early days of floating wind. We were all hoping that things could happen faster. But at the same time, we don't have to lose the perspective that it's happening. It's really happening. So we have quite a number of demonstration projects in the water. There's more coming on stream. More recently, I heard that yesterday some of the demonstration projects in France were connected to the grid. Guillaume, I think, was connected to the grid. And there's more coming. So the pipeline is there. We have quite a number of projects around 1.5 gigawatts of capacity that has already offtake agreements awarded. There's a large pipeline of several gigawatts of capacity. So the industry is probably slowly but steadily progressing. Sometimes I have the impression that floating wind is asked more than was asked to other renewable technologies in the past. And many people are expecting it to happen faster, that cost reduction happens faster than what we have observed in fixed bottom in the past, or in solar or onshore wind in the early days. So that is happening, but what we need is volume, and what we need is these first projects to happen within the next few years. And that's the main purpose of this offshore wind accelerator that GWEC is conducting these days.
Thanks for the plug.
I think big effort. I was talking before about this collective effort. We should all be partners. And that's our view on how to support this first project that need to reach FID between now and 2030. And those projects are really critical. If they happen, they are successful, I'm convinced there's plenty of investors' money ready to contribute to additional growth in the next few years.
And when we're talking about this with wider stakeholders, I think there's a kind of common question that comes up at the moment, which is, and you referred a little bit to it, so it's this balance of floating wind as a more nascent technology, the need for competitiveness, the need for cheap renewables. How do you think, in your opinion, you balance that need for innovation? Because the world can't stand still, and we need the technologies for, a few years hence, not just what we have right now. But at a time when there is that focus on competitiveness, how do you see that balance being achieved when it comes to floating?
Yes. Well, I think it's probably the same as with other parts of the renewable space, or with other businesses, for the matter. For me, the two most critical factors here are predictability. It's very important that the decision makers develop clear roles that are executed. And those plans are there. I think there's quite a number of countries which have high ambitions in the offshore wind space in general, for floating in particular as well. It's super important that those plans materialize. So we cannot minimize the importance of the public decision makers, the governments, and other institutions in setting up plans, but in helping those plans materialize. That's probably the most critical success factor, because when the industry has a clear vision about how it will evolve, then innovation happens almost automatically, because you can invest in new technologies, in new ideas, because you know that there's going to be a market for those. So that's super important. The second important aspect is competition. And when we're talking about clients before, when we ask them what they need from the industry, what they tell us is we want to have options available. We want people to compete so that we can have a choice. And that's super important across the industry. Also for innovation. So innovation needs to come out of competition. And yes, specifically for floating wind, we need to realize that this is a new technology. And just like previous new technologies, there's a launching phase in which you need to cover the gap in costs so that volume can come, innovation can come, cost can be reduced, and you have another option in the portfolio of technologies available to achieve our renewable goals, decarbonization goals, and also the objective of producing energy locally.
We started to touch on this, but when it comes to offshore wind, I mean, we actually just launched our global wind report yesterday. I don't know if you saw this key message from that report. Wind is growing exponentially around the world, even in some places where you might not believe that that's the case. And we're also seeing a new, more diversified set of markets, which are taking forward wind power, both onshore, offshore, hopefully floating in the future. And I know that in your previous role also at BlueFloat, a key element was working in those emerging markets. So what do you think the biggest challenge is when we're looking at those emerging markets, but also looking at maturing markets like Europe? I mean, often when we're having these kinds of conversations, we're also recognizing the fact that Europe hasn't grown at the speed that's necessary either. So I think it is a question of, in both sets of markets, emerging and maturing, what do you think those barriers are, and how can we break down some of those barriers to speed up deployment?
Yeah. So I think they have been discussed over and over, and I might not bring anything kind of brand new here, but it's important to insist on those factors. So as I mentioned before, visibility on development plans is super important. It's not just about setting ambitious goals. It's about setting the path to reach those goals and executing actions to go through that path. In the reports, it was impressive to see that China makes up around 60 or 70% of global growth. I think that comes from the fact that China in particular has been very good in setting ambitious goals and executing against those goals. So that's something probably we can learn in other geographies. A sensible regulatory framework is critical. I think GWEC is doing an amazing job there in supporting different countries across the globe, understanding which are the types of regulation that have worked in other geographies. We don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. Leveraging what has worked in other geographies, of course, adapting that to the local conditions. It's probably the best recipe. And we're seeing this in some geographies that are emerging as new markets for offshore wind. That's very important. A third factor is, as I said before, offering developers first visibility, just commented that, but also options so that they can optimize the development and execution of renewable projects and offshore wind projects in particular. So having a global supply chain that works, of course, on a level playing field, but where developers can leverage the best from each company, each geography, is super important. So Europe is central to that development, not just in Europe, but across the globe. Virtually every single project across the globe has mainly been executed thanks to European technologies, European engineering, European industry. And that will continue being the case because there's so much accumulated knowledge that Europe has an edge there. But when you see the growth expected across the globe, in Europe as well, there's not enough capacity across the European industry to supply all that. So you need to leverage the global capacity to meet those targets. And it's about as I said before, collaboration. It's about leveraging what's works best in different geographies and deliver projects at the highest speed and the lowest cost possible.
That's an important point. And you mentioned before that Dajin, obviously a Chinese company founded in China, but now a truly international company, having worked in over 30 different countries, deployed 10 gigawatts of different projects. So a lot of international experience as well. And I just wondered a bit more about your perspectives on that and how you see that framework evolving. You mentioned a little bit about how you see the role of different supply chain players in the European market. But how does that map out also in terms of the other markets you might be working in? And how do you bring together the best of that expertise to get the best plan?
Yeah. So again, sorry to repeat myself, but it's about putting the projects and the clients at the center of your strategy. So understanding the needs of those projects, the timing, and how to achieve those projects in cost and in time, and develop the necessary capacity and skills to support those projects. And that applies to Europe. It applies to other geographies as well. So for us, it's been a learning process. And we've learned that clients are not asking just for supply of equipment, they are asking for solutions. They're not asking just for price, they're asking for value. And value is very much linked to quality, of course, but also on-time delivery of identifying which are the interface risks and try to manage those proactively. So when we're talking about serving project today, we're not talking just about here's the equipment and we forget about it. It's about understanding, okay, what are the services you will need for your project to be successful and for your business model to work properly. And when you have that perspective, you eventually end up developing these adjacent activities I was mentioning, shipping, availability of the means to transport those equipment. It's about marshalling ports. We've developed agreements with different ports in Europe, marshalling services, which was not a core activity for us, but it's become a core activity. And we keep exploring how we can serve our clients. We're now considering T&I as an area where there needs to be more solutions available for clients. That vision, which is definitely critical for Europe, applies to other countries. So we're already present in markets like Japan, like Korea, and entering others ahead of project execution so that we can understand how to bring those solutions to clients there as well, leveraging on the experience from other markets, but also adjusting to the local needs and the local demands from.
And just thinking also about the impact then of the kind of geopolitical situation with the war in Iran, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz for such an international company, which is also investing in vessels, supply chain components also around the world, and even just bringing together these international teams, right? How are you seeing the impacts of that conflict play out in your business area at the moment? And how do you think that the markets that you're working at are responding to these challenges?
So, unfortunately, the situation in Iran is not something new, unfortunately. It's a reflection of the fact that the world has changed. And that has major implications for the energy industry. I was in a business lunch in Brussels recently with Vice President and Commissioner Teresa Rivera speaking, a very interesting speech. And she started by saying that she knew from her career that wind and solar were intermittent sources of power, of energy. But she wasn't aware
That's a way to open a speech in a renewables crowd, I have to say.
Exactly, but she wasn't aware that oil and gas were also an intermittent source of energy. And that's unfortunately the situation today. So I think that for Europe, but also for other markets, other countries across the globe, develop local sources of energy is paramount, and it's probably not priced correctly still on the price of those local sources of energy. So I think this is another wake-up call for accelerating plans for putting the fast deployment of renewables at the lowest cost possible at the core of the energy policy, again in Europe, but also in other parts of the world, and to think about what are the levers we have to meet this goal. And Dajin as a global company is definitely keen on supporting that perspective. And that's why we developed the strategy we are developing, which includes having the capacity to serve different markets across the globe. We diversified routes, but also working with the local industry to develop those solutions. And that's very much what we are doing in Europe. We are currently delivering projects in Germany and Poland together with Polish companies that can bring strong local expertise, cost competitive solutions for some of the key components of our equipment, like secondary steel, like different equipment going into the foundations. We have announced plans to invest in Europe in production capacity here to leverage on the strong capabilities existing in the market, and to have, again, more diversified sources of production. We are working to develop partnerships in these adjacent industries, because we are very aware that we not necessarily always have the capabilities, all the capabilities. So again, talking about collaboration, partnerships will be absolutely critical. So it's really working with a global mentality, with a collaboration mentality, but always keeping in mind what is the shared objective, which is fast deployment of massive amount of green power at the lowest possible cost. That should be our main and key goal.
And Carlos, you've had a lot of experience in the industry so far, and I'm sure you've been through quite a few kind of ups and downs of the industry since its inception. How are you kind of reading this moment? Because, I mean, we already talked about the situation in the Middle East, the war in Iran, but at this conference last year, I feel that the conference had a very different feel to what we're seeing play out this year, which is a kind of renewed boldness, I would say, around Europe's position. How do you interpret these? And also really interested in your perspective now, working in an international company, which does have this kind of confluence between the East and the West, I guess, being a bridge of these approaches. So how are you kind of reading the moment that the industry's in general?
So you're right. I think those have worked in renewables for a long time know that this is an industry with ups and downs. I remember the early days of solar with a big boom, despite the very high costs, and then a big bust, especially here in Spain, and then another big boom, and more recently in Spain, things have slowed down due to grid congestion and so on and so forth. So you need to be ready for the ups and downs, the roller coaster, because that's part of our business. The only way to, in my view, to be successful is to have a long-term perspective about things. A long-term perspective means that in the ups, you need to keep your feet on the ground. In the down, you need to be resilient and keep working. And I think we've all seen this in our careers. I definitely saw this in my own career. Personally, what I like about Dajin is that I think it's a company that has feet on the ground, but this long-term perspective about business, the patience to wait for better times to come, and the speed to leverage on the opportunities when they arrive. The current moment is very interesting, because we are coming from a slowdown, a small crisis, if we use the right words. But at the same time, I think governments, especially some governments, are, I think, smart enough to keep supporting this industry. We've seen bold moves from countries like the UK, like Netherlands, like France, and the list is longer, Japan and others, providing strong signals that the plans for offshore wind are here to stay, and that they are even keen on accelerating those plans. Those signals are very important. Come back to the previous message about predictability. And what you can see in in Wind Europe here in this conference is that message is heard by the industry, and everybody understand that it's not the best moment of the industry, but we're moving in the right direction, and everybody's keen on playing its part to make those plans happen.
And so you've mentioned there about this long-term perspective, and that's it sounds like that's the way that you like to work as well, having that vision of the future. So let's think about that a bit more. If you're here today in Madrid at Wind Europe conference and you're looking at 10 years hence, what does the offshore wind industry look like, and what do you see happening in the meantime that enables us to get there?
Well, when you look ahead in perspective, from my point of view, you find something amazing. I think there's few other industries that offer such an amazing potential. We're talking about volumes which are mind-blowing, not just in Europe, but across the globe. This is a global industry. We'll see what happens in the US, and of course, the recent news there are not very encouraging, but everywhere else in the world, what we see is a strong push to make those plans happening. And we don't have to fool ourselves. It's going to be a very challenging route to get there. But the perspectives long run are just impressive. It's all about how to navigate the ups and downs that we'll face to get there. But we don't have to lose the perspective that the opportunity is just unbelievable. It's just amazing.
Well, a very optimistic take, which I personally subscribe to, and I think everyone at GWEC also has that sense of optimism about the future of what we can achieve together. So I share your views and your goals. We're now going to move on to a traditional section of the podcast that we run every time we record this podcast, which is a section about what's caught your eye in the offshore wind news lately. I have a couple of points that I'm going to put forward. The first one is, I don't think that listeners or viewers can actually see Carlos's socks, but what's caught my eye is Carlos's marvelous socks, which have offshore wind turbines on them. I think thanks to Rampol for those socks, right, Carlos?
This one is very regular, yes, but they have a good collection of nice industry socks that they keep good care of.
Good to hear. We'll all be trading and exchanging about who's got the best socks. So if you're listening, you want to provide the GWEC team with the best socks for next time around or for the APAC conference coming up, we'd love to hear your sock ideas.
And keep some for me, please.
Keep some for Carlos. But my other thing that's caught my eye lately is, I'm going to plug a bit of GWEC work that we've done. So two things. Again, we launched the Global Wind Report yesterday. What caught my eye is record growth in a number of new markets. India, best ever year. Saw another record year in China, which we've come to expect now. But also huge growth in lots of different countries now, and even record growth in the US, which is a really interesting thing that was coming out of our report yesterday. And then the second thing that I want to flag is something we've previously spoken about on the podcast, which is the Floating Wind Industry Accelerator that GWEC is pulling together. And this is all about how we can speed up floating. We've got a meeting coming up tomorrow where we're going to hopefully unpack some of the industry challenges and really set a course for the future direction of what the industry can do itself moving forward floating wind. So those would be my two things. Normally in this section, I do kind of spread it out a bit, look globally at what's happening and provide a bit of news, but we're here in a selfish mood in promoting GWEC. So those are my two things that I wanted to flag this time round. But for you, Carlos, what's caught your eye out there in the offshore wind world in the last few weeks?
Yes. So, as I said before, I think in a moment where some people may have some doubts about offshore wind, I think there is a relentless commitment from the key markets to continue supporting this industry. There's a shared view that offshore wind has gone through some turmoil, but there is a way forward to make this industry competitive, cost competitive. It's clear that we may not be fully there now, but there are key elements that makes you think that the path towards cost competitiveness will be there, provided we have this visibility, this predictability, and this competition in the market. So that's something I think people should retain France with AO9, AO10, UK accelerating AR8. I will not go through the list, but there's a clear commitment from many geographies to keep developing this. So you want to keep this in mind if you're an investor, if you're planning to invest in this industry, trying to invest in the supply chain as a whole. Look at all these signs because you need to have the full picture, and this is definitely part of the full picture. The other one, I will build on what you were saying because it's again my passion.
Close to your heart, close to my heart.
Close to my heart, which is floating wind, and that message also applies to floating wind. Some people might have doubts, but the reality is that floating wind keeps progressing. There are clear plans about which projects could be executed in the next few years. Developers are backing these projects. It doesn't mean these are easy projects. Of course, there are many challenges, but there are solutions to address those challenges. And by collaborating through initiatives like the Floating Wind Accelerator, sponsored by GWEC, I definitely think I'm fully convinced we can achieve those. We can make floating wind cost competitive. I know that some people might move in their chairs. That's gonna happen, and there's a clear path to achieve these. There's so many innovations, global supply chain with solutions like the ones that Dajin is proposing in fabrication are there to support that cost reduction. And the price is just unbelievable because you will be able, through that technology development, supply chain development, and cost reduction, you will be able to unlock massive potential in many geographies. So it's definitely worth continuing our efforts because we will get there. When we get there, this will no doubt contribute very significantly to our shared goals.
I think that's such a great optimistic note to leave things on. I know that you're a busy man and the conference floor is swarming with people who are having meetings, so we won't take more of your time today. But thanks for sharing a really optimistic take about the future. I think it's a take that we absolutely share at GWEC and all the good work that Dajin is doing in progressing markets around the world and providing your services there. So thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. It was a pleasure as always. And thanks to GWEC for having us here and for all the good work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.